In the mid-90s, 3D was all the rage, from computer animation to those freaky magic eye posters.
If you stare at these things long enough, you're supposed to see some kind of hidden three-dimensional picture.
Oh yeah, look, it's a sailboat.
You saw it too, damn it!
Video game companies took advantage of the 3D craze by creating new systems with primitive 3D capabilities, like the Nintendo 64, the Sony PlayStation, and the Sega Saturn.
Me and you and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be the only one for me is you.
Something's gone wrong in the happy-go-lucky world of Nintendo.
These early attempts at 3D rendering resulted in graphics that were bulky, boxy, blinky, and blurry. They were a far cry from today's lifelike 3D games. But 90s kids still thought they were freaking amazing.
We are 5 years away from entering the 21st century. Humankind stands on the edge of the interactive age. You have come a long way. But are you ready for the future?
Sega began designing the Saturn as early as 1992, but they amped it up in 1994 to better compete with the PlayStation.
With the forthcoming release of the PlayStation in September of 1995, Sega decided to rush out their new system in May, 4 months earlier than its planned release.
Unfortunately, the Saturn just couldn't compete with Sony's shiny new system and was considered a commercial failure.
The release of the Nintendo 64 in late 1996 was the nail in the coffin for the Saturn, and it was discontinued 2 years later.
While the Saturn was only around for a short period, it still boasts a library of almost 250 games in the US and about 600 worldwide, nearly twice as many as the Nintendo 64.
Perhaps the best example of the Saturn's blocky graphics is its series of Virtua games, including Virtua Fighter, Virtua Strike, and Virtua Racing, to name a few.
These games feature real-time polygonal graphics, with enemies that react differently depending on where they're hit.
These graphics were also featured in the House of the Dead and Time Crisis. Be sure to check out our reviews on those games too.
Attempt to enter premises. Wait for backup. Do you copy Unit 7? Unit 7?
Virtua Cop began as an arcade game in 1994 and was released on the Sega Saturn in 1995. It's a classic rail shooter that uses the Sega Stunner, one of the few light guns out there that actually works pretty well.
You play as two Virtua cops, Michael Hardy and James Cools, who fight crime in Virtua City, where armed Virtua criminals lurk in every dark corner.
Virtua City has been overtaken by an evil Virtua crime syndicate called Evil. Yes, they actually named their evil crime syndicate Evil, spelled EVL, like it's supposed to be an acronym for something.
What does EVL stand for? Ending Virtua Lives? Every Victim Loses? Electronic Visualization Laboratory?
Your mission is to shoot and kill as many Virtua criminals as possible without accidentally killing any innocent Virtua civilians.
Killing a Virtua civilian will end up costing you a Virtua life. I guess that's fair. A life for a life.
At first, it's pretty easy to avoid killing civilians, but it gets increasingly difficult as the game progresses.
These dudes just pop up in front of you like they don't even realize there are Virtua cops shooting Virtua bad guys here, and they should stay out of the Virtua way. Sometimes you can't help but kill them. It's a hell of a thing, killing a Virtua man. You take away all he's got and all he's ever gonna have. Every time I close my eyes, I see the polygon faces of my Virtua victims.
Tell me what you gonna do when it ain't nowhere to run. When judgment comes for you, when judgment comes for you. Tell me what you gonna do when it ain't nowhere to hide. When judgment comes for you, 'cause it's gonna come for you. Looking at for quality, easy sees Uncle Charlie. Little boo guys got him, and I'm gonna miss everybody out of rolling flows like eggs. Looked at him while lag and played for dust, and they play too deep for being sad. Little legs I came to be. Tell me your piece of deceased, would it please? Marry me by my time to heaven. Follow the Lord all 24/7 days. God is who we praise, even though the devil's all up in my face, but he keeping me safe and in my place. Say grace to the gates we race, but I change to face the judge, and it blesses my soul with books. Grudge because there's no mercy for thugs. Ooh, what can I do? It's all about the family and how we grow. Can I get a witness? Let it unfold. We living our lives to eternal our soul. Hell, hell.
Virtua victims? Don't be Virtua melodramatic. Look down there. Tell me, would you really feel any Virtua pity if one of those polygons stopped moving forever? If I offered you 20,000 Virtua dollars for every polygon that stopped, would you really tell me to keep my Virtua money? Or would you calculate how many polygons you could afford to spare?
But they're on our side.
What are you doing? You're on my team!
There are no teams.
Ah!
Of course, if you use a Game Shark to give yourself infinite Virtua lives, you can kill as many Virtua civilians as you want without any Virtua consequences.
You can also turn on auto reload, which automatically reloads your Virtua gun when you pull the Virtua trigger, so you don't have to fire off screen.
In a light gun game like this one, there's no reticule to help you aim, so shooting off screen can be problematic, as it makes you lose track of where you're shooting. It's almost like you have to recalibrate your eyes every time you reload.
Aside from Virtua bad guys and innocent Virtua civilians, you can also shoot some objects in the background, like boxes and barrels. Red barrels explode to murder every Virtua enemy on the screen.
Boxes sometimes contain extra lives and gun upgrades, like a rifle, shotgun, automatic, or machine gun. They have limited Virtua bullets, but they're fun for a short period of time.
While there isn't a reticle to help you aim, there is one that shows you exactly where the enemies are. It starts out green and changes to red if a Virtua bad guy's about to shoot you. If you're too slow, you can get shot, which shatters your screen and takes away one of your Virtua lives.
Sometimes dudes will just pop up in front of your face with Virtua axes and try to hack you up. That's when you really need to have quick reflexes to blow them away before they get you.
The voiceovers are pretty hilarious, like the Virtua civilians who shout, "Don't shoot me" and "Help me" in funny accents, and the first boss who, well, I have no idea what the hell this guy's saying.
Pretty bold, aren't we? I'll take care of you myself.
The Virtua music is slamming, but one song sounds suspiciously like Walk the Dinosaur by Was Not Was.
At the end, you fight this boss named Fang. You shoot him for like 10 minutes straight, turning him into Virtua Swiss cheese. And then the credits roll, and you see him being led away in handcuffs. How is he not dead?
Virtua Cop 2 hit arcades in 1995 and was ported to the Saturn in 1996. This version features 3 characters, even though you can only play as 2.
Michael Hardy and James Cools are back, but now they have the nicknames Rage and Smarty, and they're joined by Janet Marshall, whose nickname is Janet. Clever.
Virtua Cop 2.
The gameplay is the same, but now it's even harder to avoid hitting Virtua civilians because they blend in with the Virtua enemies.
They also just chill in the background like nothing's going on. Look at this guy moseying along in the Virtua subway. And this dude sitting there reading the Virtua City paper. Hello? There are men with guns here. Unfortunately, many Virtua civilians were killed, bringing us this game.
Yeah, man, I miss my Uncle Charles, y'all. And he shouldn't be gone in front of his home. When they did, the root was wrong. Who's so wrong? Gotta hold on, gotta stay strong. When it comes, better believe on. Gotta show that you can lean on.
bother trying to use a Game Shark with this game. We tried, it doesn't work. Fortunately, it does have a built-in code for unlocking free play, so you can kill as many Virtua civilians as you want.
You're a Virtua monster.
Another new feature is that you can pick where you want to go, like a Virtua Choose Your Own Adventure novel, which gives the game more replay value. In the Virtua Subway, you can choose between Arcade Line and Saturn Way. Cute.
The power-up boxes and explosive red barrels are back, but now you can shoot even more stuff in the background, like signs, bottles, and CRT monitors.
Well, Virtua Cop 1 ripped off Walk the Dinosaur, 2 rips off The Cure's Why Can't I Be You?
The voiceovers are a little more clear than they were in Virtua Cop 1, but now they're really quiet, so we still can't figure out what the bosses are trying to say.
I'll remember this after I finish. Die!
At the end, the game rates you based on shooting accuracy and how many Virtua civilians you killed. I got Klutz Cop.
Klutz Cop. Good cop.
Klutz Cop? How about Stone Cold Heartless Serial Killer Cop?
In 2001, Virtua Cop 2 was re-released on the Sega Smash Pack for the Sega Dreamcast, which also features columns.
Oh, good, columns! I really needed another version of columns to add to my collection. I only have 27 other copies.
And of course columns, because Sega tacks columns onto everything.
Sega, stop trying to make columns happen. It also features columns. Wow, we only have columns on 14 other Sega collections. I'm surprised columns isn't there.
Columns. Sega will put out 80 different versions of columns, but not this? What a shower of bastards.
The Virtua Cop 2 port on the Smash Pack was based on the PC version, which actually has smoother graphics than the Saturn version. Since there was never a light gun made for the Dreamcast in the US, you can use your controller or try one of the many third-party guns available.
In our House of the Dead 2 review back in 2011, I had some harsh words to say about third-party gun controllers for the Dreamcast.
And you can't use a gun controller on a Dreamcast.
Actually, Jen, there are several third-party gun controllers for
I said you can't use a gun controller on a Dreamcast.
Oh, but there's the Dream Blaster by Mad Catz and...
No, you can't use a gun controller on a Dreamcast.
Okay.
Seriously though, you can't use a gun controller on a Dreamcast. They don't work. They just don't, period. The control is so bad, they're unusable. It's like using a Nintendo Zapper on an LCD TV. Underwater, blindfolded.
So you're saying you don't like it?
Yeah, I stand by that. Actually though, with the Mad Catz Dream Blaster, playing Virtua Cop 2 on the Dreamcast didn't exactly make me want to paint the walls with my brains. But with other games, it just sucks. More on that later.
There are other subtle differences between this version of Virtua Cop 2 and the Saturn version. For one, the sign in the Virtua Subway that said Saturn Way now says DC Way, as in Dreamcast, I guess.
This billboard, which featured an image of a woman in a bikini in the Saturn version, now shows characters from Shenmue, another AM2 game. Lame.
Since it's on the Dreamcast, the Smash Pack makes use of the VMU, or Visual Memory Unit. It plugs right into your gun or controller and displays cute graphics that relate to the game. For example, it shows your current accuracy along with a smiley face or a sad face, depending on your skills.
I guess when you think about it, the VMU is sort of like a primitive precursor to Nintendo's Wii U gamepad. It shows you information on the screen which you really can't look down at while you're trying to play the game. The difference is that the Wii U gamepad is way more annoying.
The gunshot graphics are more exaggerated and kind of make it look like the Virtua enemies are getting electrocuted when you shoot them. It's like you're shooting them with phasers instead of pistols.
In one level, where you're in some kind of Virtua lab, There's now an alarm going off with shrill noises and flashing lights. It makes me want to puke.
There was a Virtua Cop 3 released only in arcades in 2003. It was scheduled to be ported to the Xbox, but plans were scrapped when game makers realized that they would have to produce a light gun for just that one game. Some diehard fans have been able to run the game on their Xboxes, though, with a few modifications.
We are hoping that someday all 3 Virtua Cops will be released on the Wii U, so we can play them with Wii remotes. Please, Nintendo?
Many gamers call Confidential Mission a spiritual sequel to the Virtua Cop series. Released in arcades in the year 2000 and on the Sega Dreamcast in 2001, Confidential Mission features many of the same mechanics as the Virtua Cop games, but with FBI agents instead of cops.
A James Bond wannabe named Howard Gibson teams up with fellow agent Gene Clifford to catch a group of terrorists who have stolen a satellite, which I guess they're using to blow up the world or something? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It features smoother, less polygonal graphics in the Virtua Cop series, with more detail and texture. It's fun to see characters with detailed faces talking to you without moving their mouths.
It's over, Agent Gibson. Prepare to die.
While Virtua Cop 2 on the Sega Smash Pack made it look like your enemies were being electrocuted, in Confidential Mission it looks more like confetti is popping out of them. It's like they're all giant piñatas.
This game introduces short missions where you're required to shoot objects to accomplish a goal. In one, you have to shoot a grappling hook out of a window, and in another, you have to shoot a gummy substance to close up air vents and prevent poisonous gas from escaping.
It's in these sequences that the problems with the third-party gun controllers become patently obvious. The poor calibration makes these short missions impossible to complete. This is a big problem because you must complete the final mission successfully in order to beat the game.
The final boss is a guy in an eye patch who wears a cool suit made out of TV screens that makes him semi-invisible. He gets away and floats off in a submarine, so you have to bust out your trusty flash drive and use the satellite to blow it up.
The mission is to line up both players' reticles and fire one shot together to blow up the sub. You have about 2 seconds to pull this off, and with the odd little analog stick on the back of the gun and general crappiness of the gun itself, there's no way that's happening. So after struggling through the whole game, your mission ends up failing. Lame.
This is another game which we would love to see released on the Wii U with a proper reticle and motion control instead of a makeshift third-party light gun. Until then, this is the best that we can do.
We're on a whole Sega shooters kick right now, so stick around for some more polygon light gun action.
Get up, get out of bed, look out the window, it's a beautiful day. Gonna play some games, gonna eat some Captain Crunch, cause we're living a dream, yeah. Turn on our Sega Saturn, turn on our Dreamcast every day. Got everything that we need right here, right here. This is our life, and it's virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome, yeah. This is our life, and it's virtual awesome now. Virtual virtual racing and fighting too. We've got no use for reality, yeah. Cause we're the best. Game skills for days. Chris and Jen are just great. And everybody else is lame. This is our life, and it's virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome, yeah. This is our life, and it's virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome, yeah. We don't get sick, we don't get tired, we never get old, we never get scared. We do what we want, we do what we want, yeah. We don't grow up, we don't get mean, could be anything that we wanna be in our very own virtual world. This is our life, and it's virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome, yeah. This is our life, and it's virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome now. Virtual awesome, yeah.
You down with the captain? What? You heard?
You see?
Captain.
The wrong way. That's better.
Yeah. Yeah. The captain, son, the captain.
I'm scared, Winnie.
Teddy did it!